So welcome everybody to today's roundtable discussion. Today's roundtable and panel discussion is about making the case for FAIR in biopharma R&D. Today we have a large panel, which is great because it's very inclusive and also covers the industry that we work in from a biopharma perspective. We have John Apathy, former VP and R&D IT at Celgene and BMS. We have Azet Agoran. He's Director of Research Data Systems at Resilience. We have Andreas Steinbacher. He's a Director of Informatics and Data Management at Roche. We have Tiffany Fabianic. She is an Enterprise Data and AI Engagement Lead at AstraZeneca. We have Abhishek Jha. He is the CEO of Elucidata. We have Mike Gillis. He is the Director of Product and Platform Architecture at Semaphore Solutions. We have Richard Hather. He's a Principal Product Owner and Director of Registration and Data Reuse at GSK. And we have Michael Shano, who is Head of Digital Transformation and Global Quality at Sanofi. We have Kate Hardy, who is Director of Informatics and Technology at MoMA Therapeutics. And we have Nick Lynch, who is the founder of Curlew Research. So with that, let's just do a little bit of background to orient everybody before we kind of get into the panel discussion. What is FAIR? And hopefully by now everybody kind of knows what it is, but if you don't, that's okay. FAIR is an acronym that has been given to this movement for scientific data that encompasses findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And it's really a change in thinking and action to data and process as an asset. It's a way to kind of measure that along this journey that we're taking. So this is really a journey with projects and programs and milestones. It's not a project. It's not something you do and you're done. It's the journey that you're going to go on for the rest of your career or the rest of your organization's lifespan. It starts with needed culture change and follows with written strategies that become easier to adopt through proper change management. So an important part to all of this is really defining what is scientific data. So scientific data is a lot of investment, scientific intuition, and that intent to do something, improve something, etc. It's a lot of experimentation and maybe testing. And what you get is a lot of data. But when it's fair, highly contextualized, highly adopted data standards, etc., you get what's called model quality data. And this is really important for now and the future when it comes to artificial intelligence and machine learning, because just like any other system that uses fuel, it has to be very clean. You're going to need a lot of it to drive future innovation and discovery, etc. So what is scientific data? This is just a critical point here. It's another form of currency. You've taken all that money, you've invested in experimentation and science discovery, research and development, but it's really converted form of currency. And if you don't manage it like you would manage your finances, whether personally or in a corporate or business setting, you're going to have a lot of problems. And that's what we've learned over the years. So what you end up with is dark or trash data when it's not fair. And that definition is information assets that organizations collect, process, and store in the course of their regular business activity, but generally fail to use for other purposes. So unfortunately, for too many organizations, this has become reality. And the truth is that between 50 and 80% of an organization's scientific data is not fair today. This leads to 40 to 80% data wrangling. This leads to hiring more data scientists and others to kind of try to fix a problem. But the problem, there's a root cause of that problem. And the fact is, there needs to be a culture change, and data needs to be fair, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So I'm going to stop sharing. And with that, we've got lots of questions for this great panel. And one of those questions has to do with how do you make a case to leadership today to make more investments in FAIR, and how do you manage those expectations around the return on investment or the estimated returns, etc. So that's the first question I have for this panel. How is that being done today? How are you seeing it working? And don't all jump at once to answer that. John, why don't you go ahead? I'll start it since you've been in that hot seat for many years.
Yeah, John, and I see Tiffany raised her hand, so we'll go to her as well. But
okay.
So as I guess perhaps a recent sponsor, I think my personal journey started many years ago, and I would refer to it as kind of the slow drip method of kind of becoming educated, becoming aware of the need, and then becoming a very active sponsor that actually kind of became part visionary, part designer, part architect, and part benevolent dictator to make things happen, right? I don't think there's a good model that says, hey, overnight, we're going to drive awareness and sponsorship and leadership buy-in. I think it has to occur, over time. And it needs to align with a significant business change or some event that perhaps either gets the organization's attention. That might be on the negative side. And I'm thinking back into the days of GSK when they had issues around data integrity, data quality, findability of clinical study data. Or it might be an event such as an acquisition integration. And I'm thinking of BMS's acquisition of Celgene, when the two very large research organizations coming together that needed to have reconciliation of data and systems and processes. And so I think that leadership buy-in has to occur kind of slowly over time, and then taking advantage of the event-driven kind of landscape so that you can tie to value. So I'll pause there.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sean. Okay, Tiffany, you were next.
Yeah, so if I was going to present on the value of FAIR to our leadership team, or potentially to somebody like John within our team, I would make the assumption that anybody in an IT leadership role, of course, understands the significance of FAIR at this point and adhering to the FAIR principles. But I think that a lot of people underestimate the cost of verifying our legacy data and implementing systems that follow and enforce these FAIR standards on data that's being created or will be created in the future. So one of the strategies that I use when presenting this to our senior leadership team is demonstrating the effect of redundancies and inefficiencies that result from our poor data management practices. Sometimes you can showcase things like experiments that have been reproduced several times because scientists can't find the data of that original study, or systems that have been deployed. In my case, sometimes APIs that have been deployed numerous times to do the same thing over and over again and are creating inefficiencies in our compute system. It's very dramatic to come to your leadership team and say, we're incurring this large expense, really quantify it for them because we're running these instances that are repeating actions over and over again unnecessarily, and seeing that there is really an importance for us to find ways to minimize that inefficiency and reduce the unavailability of our data in the current infrastructure.
I have to
Richard?
agree with Tiffany there. Definitely, we've come across that in GSK, specifically with the APIs, and again re-engineering the data. But I approached it slightly differently when I was selling it to the senior management teams. Pharmaceuticals is a data-driven company. Yeah, it's a data-driven exercise, and data is, as rightly John points out, is our currency. The experimental record is our currency. That's what we do. So we invest X billions each year into this, then we're throwing that money away. That's immediate reaction is we've got to be able to reuse it. Well, then if we want to be able to use it, we need to structure it right. And there's too much in tech, there's too much focus on systems rather than data. Systems keep changing. The data per se doesn't keep changing. And it's how do we handle the data? Then use what is the infrastructure we want to handle the data in, because people focus on systems first rather than the data, and get them keep thinking data first, data first, data first.
Okay. Abhishek, you had your hand up and took it down. You still want to respond to that?
Yeah, glad to. Yeah, thank you again, John, for setting this up. So, this question is not quite relevant for us because we make this argument from the outside. But one term that I have often used, and I saw your slide about the dollars, and I think the last comment was about that too. A term that we can borrow from software engineering world, technical debt, and if you transpose that, it's data debt. And I think at some point it makes to sign up for that debt because you're focused on some things which are more critical to business and not really invest in FAIR guidelines or FAIR platform. But you should acknowledge that you're accruing that debt, and at some point you will have to pay for it. And that's a rather negative connotation to but that's what actually it is, right? All the limitations in human experience of getting data or sharing data with your colleagues, or I've heard this often that it's much easier to do the experiment again than to find the data that I generated 3 months back. Those things are how the debt manifests, and we have used that argument with modest success, but I'm very keen to hear what other folks have done that for to convince the leadership of the internal organizations.
Anybody else want to comment? Go ahead.
Sorry, there's a couple of other people with hands up. Let them have a chance first. Yeah.
Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, just building on what Tiffany said, I think we must be open and honest with our stakeholders, and particularly really relating it as a business change, because although I know it was mentioned elsewhere about that it isn't just about technology, and it is really about the process and the people. So I think we have to be open and clear that it's going to be a journey to achieve this, and it's going to need a number of different stakeholders to make this a positive outcome.
Yeah, no question. Too many times people, whether it's a ELN implementation or you're getting new data, people look at it as a project and we're done. You're never done. And it's only the beginning. And I think this is the critical part where I think a lot of organizations make mistakes thinking that, this doesn't have a life cycle. Oh, we implemented it and we're done. No, this is just the beginning of your journey. So this is a critical thing that we see over and over again. Azed, I think your hand up was next.
Yeah, what you said, John, rung true about sometimes having to become a benevolent dictator. I've in past lives overcome the challenge of getting people to follow process by saying, oh, we can, if you don't tag or properly annotate your microscopy data, we can just delete it. If you don't care about it that much, we can just delete it all. And that often gets a nice rise out of people to kind of correct their thinking and realizing that this is more than just an asset. It's something that allows them to not be defensive, but offensive about the data that they generate. So there are a lot of defensive mechanisms to raise the value of data, raise the stakes of losing and breaking data. I joined Resilience a year and a half ago, which is just a 2.5-year-old company, because it recognized, particularly, especially in the R&D department, recognized that data can be used as an offensive mechanism, as a way to to generate revenue, to monetize it as an asset.
Okay, Michael.
I was just saying that, all such great points, but going back to the question of ROI, it's been very difficult for, hey, okay, let's implement enterprise data management governance initiative for F.A.I.R, because it's such a foundational thing, and it's basically everything else is relied on it. So any type of digital capability that you want to enable, it's all depending on your data and how well managed and the quality of that data. So when you say, and we did this, we brought in a famous system integrator, strategic consulting company, helped us, partnered, put this large PowerPoint deck together, doing a business case, and it, from a leadership perspective, it just was part of the backlog of all the other initiatives that were going on, and the cost to it, to say, let's do this all right, and the cost to do everything right was astronomical. And they just compared okay, what's the return on investment? And you couldn't describe it. So then it gets deprioritized, because, hey, there's these other fancy things, fancy capabilities that are promising ROI, but the problem is that they depend on data. So getting that point across of how important this is, it's like the foundation of your house. If your foundation of your house starts to crack, you've got to fix that before you can, add on, nicer windows or another room or anything else. That foundation is the most important part. And I think that's the communication that, we've started to have within our company of, just how foundational this is. And unfortunately, it's an affordability issue, right? We all deal with budgets and can afford things. So, how do you afford and make the case that you need to do this?
Yep. No, this is great. Is that, I don't know if you still have your hand up or you want to.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Michael, thank you for bringing up ROI. It's in leadership positions, it comes up very quickly. I think you touched on, and I was just about to lower my hand, some of the metrics that can go into embellishing ROI. Not just defensive ROIs, but offensive ROIs, things that you can use to take to the C-suite and say, these metrics are what build into the ROI. Now you understand this is something that you can put on your spreadsheet, okay, and investing, you can understand it. So it's about sometimes recognizing the metrics that can be propagated and easily understood by the C-suite to support not just the foundations, not just getting the data house in order, but recognizing, we can make money from this. We can use this to support this other cross-functional activity that is going to generate revenue or save us from losing revenue here.
Right. Okay. So this is really good. I think even if you know that, we can't afford to do this, we can't afford not to do this, it's not good enough for your executive team. You have to come up with the right detail and the right persuasion to get this done. So that's a really important part here. It's like coming to the table with problems and not solutions. You have to think through this very carefully with the management team to get buy-in to make this happen, because it is foundational, like it was said. All right, so let's go on to the next question. And this is a really good one. Are there benchmarks or checks to evaluate if companies are on track in their F.A.I.R data journey?